Today we're in the beautiful village of Port Isaac in Cornwall, England. I'll be exploring its main streets, its winding back streets and its harbour, and I'll chat a bit about why this village is so interesting along the way. By the way, we have already filmed a natural sound walk through Port Isaac, but as we've had a few requests for a guided walk, we thought we'd bring you this tour. So most of you must already know the village is the filming location of the Doc Marten TV series, and so you might know the village by the name of Port Wenn. Incidentally, if you're a fan of the series, you might recognise Doc Marten's house just here, over to our right. Anyway, I'll talk a bit more about Doc Marten later along the walk. But first of all, where exactly is Port Isaac? Well, it's located in the middle of the North Cornwall coast, which makes it a pretty good base for visiting all the towns and villages in North Cornwall, including Padstow, Newquay and Polperro. The closest towns, which are around 10 miles away, are Wadebridge and Camelford. And the amazing biodomes of the Eden project are around 20 miles away and definitely mustn't be missed. It's cheaper to pre-book online rather than buying tickets at the visitor centre. For an adult, it's £38 online and £42 if you roll up on the day. So I think you can already see that the village is a wonderful collection of whitewashed fishermen's cottages, most of which date back to the 18th and 19th centuries. The village is pretty much centred around the harbour, and the pier incidentally was built during the reign of Henry VIII. Port Isaac's fishing history goes right back to the 16th century, though I believe the port was even in use as early as Saxon times. Anyway, from 2004 onwards, things changed dramatically for what was a pretty sleepy village. Firstly with the arrival of the Doc Marten film crew, and then with the influx of tourism following its surprising worldwide success. It seems there was just something about the brilliant but flawed character played by Martin Clunes and the lovely Cornish scenery that appealed to people all around the globe. Incidentally, did you know the name Port Wenn wasn't just made up? It was in fact the old name of the nearby cove of Port Quinn. Oh, and here's another interesting Doc Marten fact. Doc Marten's full name is Martin Ellingham, and the name of the series creator is Dominic Minghella. So you might have worked out that Ellingham is actually an anagram of Minghella. So what else has the village become famous for? The original 1970s Poldark television series was also filmed here. I wonder if it's available on YouTube somewhere. I do know that loads of really good British 70s dramas are on YouTube, so it might be worth having a look. In 2000, Port Isaac was also used as the location for the film Saving Grace, where Martin Clunes played a doctor, Martin Bamford. So yes, you might have guessed that it was this film that Doc Marten became a spin-off from. In fact, there were two film sequels, Doc Marten and The Legend of the Cloutee, before the character was tweaked to become the ill-tempered Doc Marten we came to know. And very importantly, the village is also famous for being the home of the folk group Fisherman's Friends. Fisherman's Friends have been performing since 1995. Most of them grew up in Port Isaac, and they were either fishermen, lifeboatmen, or coast guards. Today I think they must be the world's most famous shanty folk group. I do like a bit of shanty. The group used to meet on the harbour, not only to play for their own amusement, but to raise money for charity. In fact, I've heard it said that they still perform now and again in the summer months, so you might catch them if you're lucky. So let's talk a bit more about Port Isaac. Well, the name Port Isaac actually comes from the Cornish Port Isaac, meaning corn port, hinting at the days it was a centre for timber and corn. The coming of the railways changed everything, as it made it so much easier to move goods around by land, and so the village decided to shift its focus and took a bit of a punt on becoming a pilchard fishing port. It did pretty well out of it too, until pilchards for some reason just fell right out of the nation's taste in the early 20th century. Anyway, wandering around, you'll see that in spite of the modern, explosive growth in tourists, the port is still a working port, and fishermen still unload their catches of crabs, fish, and lobsters at the Platte, which is the cobbled area sloping down to the harbour. Another interesting fact about Port Isaac is that it's renowned for having one of the narrowest thoroughfares in the entire British Isles. Its real name is Temple Bar, but locals aptly call it Squeezy Belly Alley. Unbelievably, it's just 50 centimetres wide at the narrowest end. It's not just Fisherman's Friends and Doc Marten that brings visitors to the town. It's also known as a foodie's destination too, and it has some really good fish restaurants. Nathan Outlaw has 2 Michelin-rated restaurants in Port Isaac, Outlaw's New Road and the Fish Kitchen. We've not been ourselves, but we've heard they're both excellent and have really imaginatively prepared food, so you might want to give them a go if you visit. So what about getting out and about in the area? Well, Port Isaac is a heritage coast area and area of outstanding natural beauty. The walk from Port Isaac to Tintagel along the coast path is really beautiful, so we'd recommend that. Regarding beaches, well, Port Isaac only has a shingle beach, but other beaches are within easy driving distance and some you could walk to. There's Damer Bay, which is a dog-friendly, sandy beach, and the Blue Flag Polsiath Beach, and also there's the National Trust-owned Trebarwith Strand. Regarding getting here, I wouldn't really recommend driving down into the harbour area. I'd imagine you could well encounter a few standoffs with other cars trying to drive up the other way. The tiny streets in Port Isaac were definitely not meant for the car, so do park on the hill. If you do come by train, the closest rail station to Port Isaac is Bodmin Parkway, and from London Paddington it takes about 4 hours. The nearest airport is Newquay, and that's about 22 miles away. So what about places to stay? Well, actually we're here in the high summer season, but we're staying here on a home exchange. It's something we've been using for quite a few years, so we might be a bit out of touch with prices of hotels. But we do know it can be pretty expensive to stay anywhere in Cornwall, so I definitely wouldn't plan to come in the school holidays unless you can help it. There's a massive choice of boutique hotels and B&Bs though, so at least there's lots of choice. And staying one of the nearby smaller villages, I'm sure would drop the price a bit. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little walk with me through Port Isaac. We plan to bring you loads more narrated guides through some of our favourite towns and cities throughout the world. And we'll still be keeping the natural sound walks going too, for those of you who prefer that. So on that note, if you'd like to see a full walkthrough of the village with natural sound and showing a few more Doc Marten locations, then there'll be a link at the end. So until the next time, take care and we'll see you soon.